Well, hello there, and welcome to this episode of The Terri Cole Show. I am so happy that you are joining me today. I want to start with a question. Do you think that you are nice? Are you a nice person? So let's take that question one step further. Is it possible that you are too nice? That is the content of today's episode. We are talking about, is it possible to be too nice? What does that look like? And what is really going on under the surface? Because my 2 cents on the too niceness thing is that there are boundary issues going on if we are too nice. And there might be high-functioning codependency issues happening as well. So before we get into it, if you happen to be new to my YouTube channel, well, hello. Say hello in the comments, because you know we are a very, very friendly group. I wanted to ask you guys to make sure that you are subscribed. So many of you come every single week. You guys know I drop 2 things a week for you. My solo episode and an episode where I'm interviewing someone else. Today is a solo episode. And I know that, last statistics we heard 67% of people who are endlessly watching on this YouTube channel for some reason are not subscribed. So if that is you, my friend, it doesn't cost you anything to subscribe, and it actually helps me in my numbers. So please go do that right now. I will wait. Okay. I feel like I waited long enough. And Mary, I wanted to also highlight a comment from Mary Guin 3532. The best way to celebrate Valentine's Day, single or partner. That was the video that she was commenting under. I love your channel. Recently got both of your books. Please keep making more content. Oh, Mary, I am. You can count on that. All right. Let's move it on into today's episode. So the question we are pondering today and dissecting today is it possible for you to be too nice? Are you too nice in your life? Now, most of us, have been raised and praised for being nice, raised and praised for being self-abandoning codependents, as I like to say. That's a true story. But also the niceness is in there, especially for women and girls. There's an expectation that you will be nice. And this is what, and I'm not saying we shouldn't be nice. But in this episode, we're really going to be breaking down, what is it to be nice? What is it to be honest? What is it to be placating? What is it to be people-pleasing, right? These are all different versions that can come out as being nice. So I think we have to make the distinction of, what does it even mean to be nice? So much of the time when we are justifying codependent behavior, we are saying, I want to be nice. This is what I'm thinking about. I'm wanting to be nice. That's why I'm doing it. So what types of behaviors come out in our relationships when we are thinking that we're being nice? A lot of times we just go along to get along. So the question is that nice? Right? Sort of endlessly deferring to someone else, or endlessly letting your partner choose because you don't care, so to speak, quote unquote. And the question is that really being nice? Or is that not taking responsibility? Or is that not asserting yourselves? And what falls under this category as well is placating people. What does that mean? That means telling people what they want to hear. And we see this in romantic relationships. We see this in relationships where, like, if you had a difficult parent that you may feel like you need to sort of placate them, or someone that you're afraid of. If you're afraid to give honest feedback, a lot of times it can be difficult to give honest feedback in a relationship where the other person is really defensive. That can just make us be like, just tell them what they want to hear. But again, I don't think it's fair to put that in the category of being nice. Because what we're really wanting to do is to control. We're wanting, in a way, to manipulate, right? We want to control the way the other person feels. If you're with a defensive person and you have something to say that you think is going to provoke them to be defensive, you may not say that thing. And you're not saying it to be nice. You're not saying it to avoid a conflict. And I think we have to get really specific about what we're doing in our behaviors, because most relationships, we need truth-telling for the relationship to be sustainable. It can't just be based on agreeing. I mean, that can last for a while, but ultimately for it to be a satisfying relationship, we have to be telling the truth. And I think that other codependent behaviors that can fall under the category of seeming nice is making the person in your relationship the center of all the things, right? Wanting to revolve your world around them, or you might be the person who has an expectation that your partner will revolve. I had a client who was married to someone, and their entire relationship was based on what her partner wanted, was interested in, where they wanted to live, the music they wanted to listen to. Like, everything was about the partner. And there was an expectation, just even driving in the car. The partner always insisted that they would drive and that had to listen to the music that they wanted to listen to. And after years of being in that situation, this client was getting really frustrated and was like, I realized that I've acquiesced to so much in my marriage out of fear of confrontation, out of fear of conflict. And now it's like being stuck listening to Broadway show tunes every time they travel, because that's what her partner likes to listen to, and having no space to be able to assert herself. And I mean, she's learning to, but it's, her husband is like, why now, basically? And it's really hard to say, well, I've just been placating you and walking on eggshells around you for the past 15 years, right? That's hard to say, even though that's the truth of what she's been doing. So again, I think we need to look at niceness through a really honest lens, because we use the term, I'm doing it to be nice, when a lot of times that's not what we're doing. We're doing it for different reasons. And I think we have to really look cleanly and clearly at why. What are we afraid of when we are doing all of these behaviors to avoid conflict? And listen, I'm not saying you're not nice. I'm nice too, right? So doing something for someone, I think it would be good if we just establish, like, what is it to be nice? Doing something kind, doing something that's needed, doing something that's asked for, right? I always give the example, like shoveling your elderly neighbor's walkway and their driveway is nice, right? That's an actual act of niceness. Not telling someone the truth about how you feel to avoid them being upset is not nice. That's more manipulation than nice. And listen, we come by all of these behaviors honestly, so to speak, right? Maybe this is how you got along in your childhood, right? Is that people pleasing is a real skill. But why do we people please? Well, obviously, fear of rejection, fear of angering the other person, and overall, we could put the umbrella as like fear of conflict. And there is an expectation, right? How were we raised? We were raised to be nice, as I was saying before. So I do think that there is a lot of times an expectation that as women in particular, we will be pleasing. We will be considerate. We will be thoughtful. We will be nice. I mean, I always talk about being, indoctrinated into the cult of nice, and how complicated and confusing this becomes. Because the reality is, if you're the person who's always being sort of faux nice, really taking one for the team, really being codependent, right? Really trying to control things with your behaviors. And when I say things, I mean, because let's look at what codependency is. An overt or a covert bid or desire or attempt to control other people's outcomes. So again, let's bring it back to every time you say, I don't want them to think, or I don't want them to feel, you need to back it up and get on your own side of the street. Because what other people think and what other people feel is not your responsibility. What you think and what you feel are. So in the guide that goes along with this episode, I'm going to give you some questions. It's sort of like a downloaded niceness blueprint. So we can see and really it's to a degree, it's a people-pleasing blueprint as well. But I'll give you a couple of questions so that you can start to gain clarity about why you interact with people the way you do. Right? If we look at what does that actually look like when you're being overly nice when you're communicating, a lot of times it's misleading. So you may have like bad news to deliver to someone, but if you're doing it with sort of a smile on your face and being overly nice, it can be confusing. And I feel like, think about, how dealing with people who are sort of obtuse in their communication because they don't want to be not nice, so to speak. Have you ever been on the receiving end of this? Because I have, and it's really interesting. My reaction to people being, I don't know, obtuse is probably the best word for it, but like vague, sort of obstructing what they're really saying, or it's like masking what they're really saying. I have such an immediate rageful response to that. And now, is it because I probably was the queen of being roundabout and walking on eggshells when I was younger, so it really bothers me and other people? I mean, I think that that's accurate. You guys who are parents, you will most likely have one kid who gets on your nerves in a different way than the other kids. And if you really looked at why, that kid probably possesses some of the shadow qualities that you have that you would rather not look at in yourself. And I feel like this is probably true when we get healthier around things, at least for me. I have a more amplified response to people being indirect in their communication, out of fear, out of quote unquote a desire to be nice. And yet for me, it is like nails on a chalkboard. I can't stand it. I just want to be like, what are you saying? Please just say it. If we look at the South in the U.S., there are all of these cultural norms around niceness, this expectation, this sugary sweet, right? This over-the-top, quote-unquote, niceness, like darling and, oh, bless his heart, like that, But if you live in the U.S. or if you live in the South, you are so clear that someone talking that way is deceiving. Because when someone says, bless his heart, they don't mean that. They mean that person is a hot mess. They mean that person is a moron. They mean that person is a friggin' idiot. They definitely don't mean bless his heart. And it's funny, maybe because I'm a boundary boss, maybe because I live in the Northeast, maybe because it's just my personality. But I really never liked that indirect thing either. Because it's a way of not owning what you are saying. So is there a way to talk true, as I would say, and be nice? And the answer is yes. Is there a way to draw appropriate boundaries and be nice? Absolutely. So what are some steps that you can take to being more clear? Right? Once you do this little inventory, I feel like you'll be more clear as to when you are attempting to manipulate or when it's more fear of conflict than it is niceness. And then I think that we should get a whole list together of what does it mean to be actually nice? Because so much of the time when we say, well, I didn't want to say anything because I wanted to be nice, we have to be honest with ourselves and look at the fact that omitting things, saying yes when you want to say no, is not nice. It isn't. It's misleading. It's confusing. And really, it's dishonest. So I would prefer someone be direct with me and tell the truth, even if it's a truth I don't like, than for someone to placate me or be managing me, because that feels so inauthentic. And you always know when someone's managing you. I don't like it when people are overly flattering because you see, this is fawning. I can feel it. I'm a psychotherapist. So a lot of times people will use these techniques And because a lot of times, listen, it's left over from childhood. We've had these experiences, I mean, it's not a judgment thing. I wanted to do this episode because I wanted you to think about, are you too nice? And how does that leave you feeling? And I think it would be helpful to also do a relationship inventory, because you may be not acting in your best interest in some of your relationships. So if we do a quick relationship inventory, what you might discover is that you're frustrated, and where you're frustrated. In what relationships do you feel this? And a lot of times it's relationships where we are codependent. It's relationships where we need better boundaries. It's relationships where we are using the I'm just trying to be nice to avoid having hard conversations. And I think that we just have to get that in real life, we have to have hard conversations if we're going to have real relationships. And listen, I don't think they have to be hard. I don't even find them that hard at this point, right? Just being honest. Just telling the truth about how you feel. And we can start with low stakes, right? Do it in the less important relationships, right? It doesn't have to be your VIPs. Start with lower relationships, right? In my position, I'll always have people asking me to do things that I cannot do or I do not want to do. So whether it's, oh, you were on that show, can you hook me up with that show? I mean, listen, it depends on the person, right? Every situation is different. But most of the time, the answer is either I don't even know that host well enough to ask them anything, or I don't know your work well enough to actually go to the mat for you. And I will just honestly say, hey, I actually don't have that kind of relationship with them. So I'm sorry, but I can't. That's it, right? I know what I can do and I know what I can't do. And it's gotten easier and easier. And the truth for you guys, the more you do it, the easier it gets. The more honest you are, the more you realize what is your side of the street, what isn't your side of the street. The more you can be legitimately caring with people, legitimately nice with people, and not be doing it as a covert or overt bid to control other people's circumstances, situations, finances, or their feelings. Because that's a big one too, with our I'm just being nice refrain. So much of the time, we are convincing ourselves that we don't want to hurt other people's feelings. And I'm sure we don't. But the bottom line is that can't come ahead of you being honest. Because it's actually you being manipulative, not nice. And I think that for me, in my 20s, that was really a bitter pill to swallow. I was like, no, I'm really just being nice. And then the healthier I got, the more I realized, no, I was really just avoiding the conversations I needed to have. And I was using niceness as this mask or as this excuse to continue this dysfunctional way of interacting in my relationships, which of course, ultimately are not going to give me the relationships that I want, and they're not going to give you the relationships that you want. So don't forget to go get the guide, terricole.com/guide. If you like this conversation, if you'd like to keep this conversation going, I invite you to check out my membership, terricole.com/TCM. We do this kind of talking every single week, and I would love, love, love to have you. I hope you guys have the most amazing week. And as always, take care of you.